Hey y'all, so we're starting chapter 10, and I just kind of wanted to let you all know what the schedule looked like. So today's day 10 of digital learning, and on day 11, 12, 13, Wednesday, so day 13 of digital learning, next week, Wednesday, we'll be done with the book. We'll finish on chapter 15, and you guys will have the opportunity to take an AR test. And guess what? I looked it up, and this book is worth 9 points. I'm so excited for y'all. So make sure you've read through all the chapters with us. We don't want you taking a test unless you read the chapters. And you know how Mr. Granger set the bar pretty high for what our expectation is for Lexile. This Lexile level is high enough that it'll make everybody's Lexile skyrocket. Well, I'm hoping so. I know that it's high enough. I believe it was either an 8 or 900 Lexile, which our goal is only 740. So I look forward to seeing what you guys score on AR. I'm really thankful for this opportunity that I have to be reading with y'all. I wish it was in person. I know Miss Brown feels the same way because we both love reading to you guys. But I went ahead and picked out the next book study, and it is so good. It's actually one of my favorites that we have for fourth grade, and it's called Writing Freedom. So next Thursday, we will start Writing Freedom, and I really look forward to it. I just know you're going to love it. Girls, I especially know you're going to love it. So let's get started here on chapter 10, The Starving Time. Oh, man. I don't like the title of this. Okay, here we go. You know, as a reader, how sometimes you just after some time, especially in a chapter book, you feel really connected to your characters. So when you read through a title like The Starving Time, you just know that your character is about to suffer. And that's just really like you just don't want to read it. But you do want to read it because you know that there's going to be something better. There's more chapters to come, but this makes me so sad. I'm sorry, I got to plug up my laptop real quick. All right, here we go. September. Now, as you guys know, in September, that's when the weather really starts becoming chilly. And they are so far north towards the Rocky Mountains, it's a lot colder than it would be here in Georgia. Maybe you'll be able to open up a tab and look up where the Rocky Mountains are in the United States, just so you can have a better reference as to where they're discovering as they're heading out west. All right. The Starving Time, September 1805. When the Corps of Discovery entered mountain country, Seaman was the only one of many four-footed members of the expedition. A small herd of horses trudged along with the explorers. Some of the horses carried riders, others carried baggage. Seaman jogged comfortably alongside the horse's legs, his fur waving and the skin on his back rolling from side to side. The Shoshone horses were used to running with Indian dogs, and calm-natured Seaman did not frighten them. Until now, the Missouri River had been a sort of map through the wilderness, but when the explorers entered the Rocky Mountains, there were no clear landmarks to follow. They blundered through dense patches of tangled bushes. Thorny branches snagged the men's buckskin clothing and scratched their faces. They struggled up rocky hillsides with slopes as steep as the roof of a house. Sometimes loose stones shifted beneath the horses' feet and they lost their footings. Whenever a horse stumbled, Seaman ran back and urged it on. The explorers followed old Toby, their Shoshone guide, into the rugged landscape. They accepted his directions and maybe I skipped a page. They accepted his directions and kind of looks like it stopped. Huh. Very funny, Monsieur Shannon, Charbonneau grumbled, his face red. You make jokes tonight, and the men laughed at Charbonneau. But I think you will not be so funny tomorrow. This is the last of our pork, so I think we should be careful about who gets to share the meat. I gotta go back, y'all. 1 second. I don't understand. That was 104. 102. There is a page that's been skipped. I don't know how to fix that. Looks like we lost a page. So this is a good opportunity to talk about context clues. So I've never had this happen before, but we can use our context clues to kind of figure out what's going on from here. So think about when we're using our context clues, it's kind of like we have to use the schema from our mind. So we have to imagine everything about what we know, and then we have to use what's part of the from the text, and we have to kind of build some inferencing in here to figure out what happened. So it sounds to me so far like someone's talking about sharing the meat. So let's see where it goes from here. I would love to hear what you guys learned from this. Sorry about the confusion. I will have to let Epic know that there is a whole page missing from their book. So let's start here on the second paragraph of this page. Today our hunters were able to find only a few grouse. Grouse?
Grouse.
Grouse. A variety of various plump-bodied game birds that are usually reddish and grayish. So a few horses, or birds. I don't know why I said horses. Charbonneau continued. And the grouse are such... Look at that. It says it right there. The grouse are such skinny birds. They have more feathers than meat. He rolled his eyes in disgust. So tonight you make fun of Charbonneau. Tomorrow you may not be so merry. We're in the middle of the mountains, and we do not know where our next meal will come from. Fortunately, a band of about 400 Indians crossed the pass with the corpse the next day. They were on their way to meet their allies, the Shoshones, for the autumn buffalo hunt. Y'all, allies is a word you're going to need to know for 5th grade. So let's go ahead and click on that word so you can know what allies means. So in allied nations of World War I and World War II, one associated or united with for one another for a common purpose. So here's the definition that I think would be best for you to think of when you think of allies. Allies are like a united, like they join together in alliance, which is kind of this verb down here. Allies are like the two or more that are coming together for the same thing. So if it's talking about this this group of Indians, they're coming together with the Shoshone, their allies, to come together to hunt. So they both have the ambition to hunt down the buffalo together. So they'll work as a team versus working separate from each other. Old Toby introduced the Indian chiefs to the captains, who gave out a few medals and small gifts. Although the Indians' food supply was very limited, they shared their small stock of berries and roots. Before they parted company, the Indians also traded some of their horses, increasing the expedition's herd to more than 40 animals. That evening, Seaman received a share of dried berries and boiled roots, just like the other explorers. Luckily, York had saved the bones from the salt pork, and he boiled these with the roots to add flavor to the scanty meal. Seaman gobbled his share of the meat-flavored roots and then licked up every dried berry in his little pile. After he finished dishing out supper, York finished out the bones and laid them in front of Seaman. There you go, big fella, York said. Maybe you can scrape out some of the marrow. Be more like a food dog. Be more like the food a dog was meant to eat. Seaman licked York's hand gratefully. He studied the bones between his paws and gnawed until every crumb of the marrow was gone. It wasn't much, but he went to bed no hungrier than the human explorers. The last of the flour was used up by the 16th of September. Now the expedition's only food stock was a small amount of dried corn and some soup mix. The captains were worried, but old Toby said that they were nearing a valley where there was game to hunt. Travel became easier when the explorers entered the Bitterroot Valley. The hunters brought the game. The expedition was able to speed up its pace and cover more than 20 miles a day. After 3 days of travel through the valley, old Toby sat beside the captains in front of the evening campfire. Seaman watched the Indian's wrinkled face and the leathery hands. Old Toby spoke in signs, showing Lewis steep mountains by drawing in the air with his index finger. His expression was very serious as he warned Lewis about the route ahead. Sacagawea sat nearby nursing Pomp. She listened carefully as old Toby spoke and helped to translate some of his words so Lewis could understand them. The expedition was about to leave the valley. Old Toby explained the route would now take them west, following Lolo Creek into the high mountains. Lewis nodded. This was the last camp before the explorers faced the most strenuous portion of the route. Old Toby said that they should stock up as much game as the hunters could find. The explorers would also need to gather their courage for the ordeal that lay ahead. The captains named the last camp in the valley Traveler's Rest. The next morning, September 10th, all the hunters went out. John Colter whistled for Seaman, his favorite hunting companion. The pair ranged for miles in search of game. Suddenly, Seaman stood, sniffing, and whined. Colter quickly dismounted, concealing himself and the horse in the shadows and signaling Seaman to join him. 3 Indians were coming toward them. Colter touched Seaman's nose with the palm of his hand to tell him to sit. Sit quietly. He studied the braves, trying to determine whether they were a friendly tribe. Finally, Colter snapped a twig to announce his presence. Then he stepped out of the shadows with Seaman by his side. Using signs, Colter invited the 3 Indians to follow him back to the camp. The Indians were from the Nez Perce, a tribe that lived west of the Rockies. They drew pictures on the ground to show that they had recently left their village. The braves had just crossed the mountains and were heading east. According to them, it was only a journey of 5 sleeps across the mountain. How the explorers rejoiced. In less than a week, they would be across the mountains. Surely the Corps of Discovery could survive such a short trip, no matter how challenging the conditions. The hunters killed 4 deer today, William, Lewis exclaimed happily as they sat near the campfire that evening. And they brought back a beaver and 3 grouse, too. Even if we can't find game in the mountains, we ought to be able to manage 5 days of travel on these provisions, not to mention what's left of our soup mix. Clark added a note of caution. The Indians seem to be able to travel faster than our men, Meriwether. Those braves say that it's a 5-day journey, but it may take us longer. On the next day, September 11th, the explorers began climbing out of the Bitterroot Valley. On the 13th, they passed a spring that bubbled out of the ground. Mist steam rose from the water. Seaman reached the spring first. As soon as his paws touched the moist ground, he yelped and jumped backward. Puzzled, the spring's waters were boiling hot. York grabbed a pot to collect some of the hot water, and he let it cool briefly. Then he stripped off his shirt, splashing his face and his chest with the warm water. Grinning, he invited the others to join him. "This is the best bath I've had in months," he declared. They proceeded on crossing Lolo Pass with surprising ease. In the afternoon, Clark rode up to Lewis. "Sees the information we got from those Nez Perce Indians is right on target, Meriwether. We're making marvelous progress. This route is level, open, and firm." Delight sparkled in Clark's eyes. "We should be out of this high country in 4 days." Lewis beamed, and his mind raced along the route ahead. "And then we'll find the Columbia River and glide downstream to the Western Sea." On September 14th, it rained and hailed. The men's clothes got soaked, and the captain stopped smiling. Seaman shook water off his sopping coat every few minutes. Then the temperature dropped, and the miserable rain froze. The ground became slippery with ice. To make bad matters worse, it started to snow. Old Toby got confused and led the expedition down the wrong ridge. The hunters came back cold, wet, and with no game. That evening, the weary explorers had to kill a colt for supper. Old Toby figured out his mistake the next day, but getting back to the trail was very difficult. Fallen trees were scattered all over the steep ground. The horses kept slipping. One of the horses rolled 40 yards down a mountain until it slammed into a tree. Luckily, the horse survived the tumble without any injuries, but it had been carrying the Captain Clark's writing desk, which was shattered. The hunters again returned empty-handed except for 2 small grouse. York heated snow to make water, added the grouse and what was left of the colt, and added a thin meat soup for the evening meal. Again, he gave Seaman the bones to gnaw. Everybody went to sleep, cold, hungry, and discouraged. The snow began to fall 3 hours before dawn on September 16th. When the explorers awoke, they found icy white powders on their faces, their hair, and their sleeping rolls. The snow continued all day, blanketing the ground in 7 inches of slippery white powder. Snow collected in fluffy little heaps in branches on trees. As the men